Welcome to the GovDiscovery AI podcast with Mike Shanley, delivering actionable expert insight and AI-enhanced business intelligence for defense and State Department markets. Here's your host, Mike Shanley.
Hi, and welcome to the GovDiscovery AI podcast. I'm your host, Mike Shanley. Our guest today is Steve Harris, VP for Defense and Intelligence at the Professional Services Council, often known as PSC. Steve has a long background in government, including as Deputy for Policy at the Defense Security Cooperation Agency in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, where he developed and implemented international policy for foreign military sales and security cooperation programs. He also held contracting and acquisition roles at the Naval Air Systems Command and the Navy International Programs Office. Steve, thanks for taking some time to join us on the show to talk about PSC, your work, and we're going to get into the Defense Conference on October 3rd.
Mike, thanks so much for having me. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So let's get started talking about, I'm interested in the perspective of PSC and associations from the government side. As I shared during the prep here, there's another association I'm on the board of, and at one point we were talking about, I wonder what government thinks about us and what our role is, and then someone else said, I don't know if they do think about us that much. So I'd be very interested in, having had that long career in government, what was it like? What did you learn about associations when you joined PSC?
Mike, appreciate the question. And again, I think it does vary depending where you are. So I will tell you, when I was in the Department of Defense, I did have more interaction with trade associations as opposed to my time that I spent over at DHS. But I think you hit the key key takeaway I would take, which is never assume. We'll probably come back to that at some point as well. And, make sure that you're able to get out there and tell folks what they're doing. I know when I had the opportunity to learn about what trade associations did from a colleague and the public-private partnership piece of it, that's what attracted me, honestly, to the job that I have here at PSC, and very lucky to have that as well. But it's that opportunity to make those matches, to allow for, private sector to partner with federal agencies and the right officials to be able to ultimately deliver the mission and the services and solutions that we seek.
So for the government employees listening here, what would your thoughts or suggestions be for them that maybe think they don't have time for, or it's not worth it, or it's not a high enough priority to attend some of these events? We'll get into our speakers at the event, but even just to, for what I love to do is connect with the government officials that aren't speaking and are just, attending and in the hallways at events like the Defense Conference next week.
Well, I think, I appreciate the question first, but, I think trade associations offer something that really does help government officials, which is trade associations have the ability to reach out and touch lots of members of the private sector. So, I'll talk about PSC for a moment here. PSC is the leading trade association and the voice of government contracting industry. We represent over 400 member companies, ranging all the way from startups to, multinational organizations. And we do everything in terms of supporting federal agencies through mission-focused services and solutions. So again, part of the attraction of talking to the trade association is you don't have to go and hear the, various voices. Often you get to hear the collective voice that is unified into one place. And albeit most of the trade associations, I know for myself, work with other trade associations. So it's not like one trade association is not talking to others. So in the defense space, I do take the opportunity. We have a biweekly exchange amongst the other defense associations.
Yeah, and so GovDiscovery AI, we are a longtime member of PSC and have found great value for the connections to government, insight into what's going on in policy, but really also the networking with the other members too. And I'd say you guys do a really good job of understanding what each member is interested in, and with a reasonable amount of effort, making the connections or helping to guide them on who might be best for them to connect with on the industry side and government.
And I think that's another important role that, from both the companies that are listening that are not a part of a trade association or from the government folks. Again, what trade associations are able to do both in the legislative and regulatory issues in terms of, pulling together, key issues regarding whether it's acquisition, business, technology. We're able to get that voice out and, be able to, again, put the right people talking to one another. And sometimes that means we're in the room, and other times that means we make the introductions and allow for the companies to then develop their relationships as well, which is a critical part of that advocacy that we do here at PSC.
So kind of reframing one of the questions, but after a couple decades in government, when you did join PSC, what was something that surprised you about PSC or how an association does work?
And one, I appreciate you helping age me on camera here, Mike. But joking aside, I think just how well, in particular, PSC does at advocating for its member companies, both with the executive branch and with the legislative branch. Again, there are times when companies want to have their name, and there's other times when they want to be anonymous. And that's time where, PSC is able to chime in, whether that's, working with the Hill on issues that may be pending, for example, in the National Defense Authorization Act or the NDAA, or as, regulations, and we're making comments on them and sharing them with different federal agencies. That level of advocacy that is continuously going on, I thought was incredible. The other piece that I thought was phenomenal was the market intelligence piece, just the overall understanding of what's going on in the markets. And obviously I'm focused a little more on the defense and intelligence side, but across both defense and intelligence and civilian as well. Very, very surprised, to see the level of market intelligence and accuracy that was out there as well.
So right before we get into the conference, I want to talk high level on that. The members interested in the defense market, what are some of those priorities or topics that they're interested in getting that insight on during this year?
So I guess I will use that as an opportunity to plug another one of our opportunities coming up, which is our Vision Conference, which will be December 1st through the 3rd. And again, there is no better place to get market intelligence than the Vision Conference. So highly encourage folks to take a look at that, check that out. I know you'll put the links on here as well in terms of where to get additional information about that. I do think, what I know from the defense and intel side, everybody wants to know what the priorities are going to be, and so that, investments can be made up front. The other focus, of course, is increasing that capacity of the defense industrial base. And then on everyone's mind is acquisition reform. And what's already occurring through both executive order and policy changes being made by the Department of War, or the department as I'll call it from here on out, or what is proposed in legislation either through the Forged Act or SPEED Act.
And I'll just note that too for the member side. So I'm on the planning committee for the defense conference next Thursday. That's been a great experience working with you, Steve, and Andrea and the team, but also working with the other members. Also for that vision forecast, December 1st to 3rd, I'm on the defense services and the defense AI and cyber. So that's been a great experience. Another great way to get involved with PSC. You get some really great access to the other members and some firsthand insight into what's going on in the government. So our reports will be coming out in that December conference. So a couple of different ways to get involved as a member.
Absolutely. Mike, thank you for participating. And to the rest of the Defense Planning Committee, thank you so much for quickly adopting me when I came on board and helping us get through this process at PSC. And to your point about the vision reports, I will say one of the first things that I read when I came into this was all of the presentations that came out of last year's vision conference, just to get an idea of where the market was, albeit back then, so that I could get a good understanding of where it was and where we are now.
How accurate were they, Steve? When you took a look at them, you obviously had the firsthand knowledge.
Yeah.
How did you read it, and what was your reaction?
I again, it is amazing. The number, I think it's close to 400 plus volunteers that help out across both the defense and civilian space to contribute to that, both government and on the private sector side. And, the accuracy, it is amazingly close. I mean, it is really good and great critical information. And again, I think that's a key part of it. I think also just being a part of the conference, obviously the networking that comes out of it as you get to know. And that's, again, as you mentioned, another opportunity to volunteer. as well, and be able to be a part of the presentations, and then obviously the networking that occurs during both the development of the presentations, but obviously the conference as well.
Well, let's get into the conference. So you'll be spearheading the 7th annual PSC Defense Conference, along with, you've been leading it along with Andrea and Tamika and some of the other colleagues at PSC. I'm surprised it's taken us this long. It's now October 23rd. There is a government shutdown. We haven't mentioned that in the first 10 minutes. I thought that would have come up earlier from my end. But given that it is a unique environment to plan one of these events, on one side, it makes it even more important than ever to connect, to share the insight, to get a sense of what's going on, but also add some unique challenges to it. So talk a little bit about the conference next Thursday.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What people can expect.
Yeah, appreciate that. It is a great opportunity. October 30th, whether in person at the Westin Gateway in Arlington, Virginia, or virtually, you can participate 12 to 6 Eastern time, just to give out the logistics there on it. But a great opportunity, obviously focusing on what issues are most important to everyone. So I kind of teed these up a little bit earlier. Acquisition reform, that's on everyone's mind. And again, where we're going with that, and what we're starting to see, and what we will see, pending legislation. The capacity, or increasing the capacity of the defense industrial base. Big issue in terms of whether it was, HR1 that went through in terms of additional funds coming in through appropriations. Obviously, we're waiting on the rest of the FY26 appropriations with the current funding lapse. But again, understanding the priorities of where we're going to put, investments against, particularly in that defense space. You see what's carved out there. The National Defense Authorization Act, as I mentioned, previous in terms of acquisition reform, we have both the Senate Forged Act as well as the House's Speed Act, merging those together in what will come out of conference in terms of what will probably be one of the most considerable forms of acquisition reform that many of us have seen in due time. Lots of good efforts have been done on acquisition reform, but this is in some ways very much an overhaul. And then, again, from an IT modernization aspect and other aspects that tie into that, where we're going, so we're very lucky. We've teed up right now. We've got 3 representatives teed up to speak for us. We've got Representative Whitman out of Virginia, again, going to come in, talk defense industrial base, and, the Speed Act and other things along those lines. We've got, following him speaking, we're going to tee up our first panel that's really going to look at what's that partnership in the defense enterprise. How does Congress, industry, and the executive branch all work together? And we've got some professional staff that are going to be a part of that discussion. Then beyond that, we will then go to have a discussion with Representative Waukesha out of Virginia as well, where, again, we're going to take some time, talk about what is the current scenario, what's going on in terms of, again, back to industrial-based capacity, IT modernization, and what we're going through right now with the effects or impacts of the funding lapse. And then we'll have a Q&A with him as well. And then we'll move into a discussion where we're going to get into sort of a little more of the details in terms of acquisition and looking at commercial solutions, if you would. So get some acquisition experts to talk about where the trends are going there. Then we'll have our third panel, which I'm really excited about as well, in terms of aligning energy demand and investment for, if you would, the future defense industrial base. And here, what we're going to talk about a lot is, AI, obviously. It comes up in just about every conference at this point, but not necessarily AI, but the energy demands that come from it, and how we're going to be able to match those both at a local level in the field. Again, looking at it from that Department of War lens. And then finally, we'll have the opportunity to have closing remarks there from the Honorable Michael Cadenazzi, who is the Assistant Secretary for War for Industrial Base Policy. So really looking forward to what he will have to say, recently confirmed, and excited. I know he's very excited about his new position and challenging the private sector. So I'm really looking forward to his remarks as well.
Yeah. Thanks for talking us through that. I find, Steve, that can be really helpful for someone that hasn't been to a PSC event, definitely not the defense one, to hear what are going to be the topics to really understand, what that value of attending would be and where they could fit in. So, yeah, you're obviously at the heart of all the conversations. What's going on? What's one thing that you're interested? I always, one thing before the conference. What do I want to learn? What's a question I have coming in? What's one or two of your questions that you have going in that you're hoping to get some clarity or insight on?
Mike, I have so many questions, and I think that's what lets us all be lifetime learners. So it's an important thing. I do, again, I'm very interested, particularly in acquisition reform and, the impacts it will have. Again, PSC represents over 400 members, like I said, both small through large. So I'm very interested in, what that's going to hold for a lot of our members and shaping that in the right direction as well. I do think, it's going to be interesting to hear with some of the more recent announcements by the Army and USA regarding energy and AI. I do think, again, I think we're going to learn a lot from that. Representative Franklin will be on that panel, and looking forward at what he will have to say from his perspective and what he's seeing as well. So I think that's going to be very, very interesting. And then I think just, the industrial base, we talk about it a lot. We talk about industrial base, supply chain. I do think it will be very, very interesting to see what insights all the speakers have to say. And then from my perspective, in terms of, the Defense and Intelligence Council that, I run, where we can make, actions out of that. So we can take, make things actionable coming out of that, and what we can do to help, look at potential solutions for that challenge that looms out there.
So how does this, there's other defense conferences there. How do you see this differentiate or fits into, I was at AUSA, obviously, tens of thousands of people there. I was at DESI in the UK. I think they said there's 45,000 people there. There's something to be said of being, how many people can we get into one building? But you can't really network with 45,000 people. What I like about the PSC, I'm kind of answering the question ahead of time here, but is that we're talking hundreds, probably a couple hundred people in the room. And there is, the speakers are there for the most part, and I think almost most of them, 90% plus in person. Their team and their staff are there. Even if you don't have a chance to connect with a member, you can connect with their team. So I find that the high level speakers, but in that smaller environment, rather than here's the secretary speaking to 40,000 people, here's a senior decision maker speaking to 100 or 200, 300 people in a room. How do you feel about where it fits into the defense conference context?
Well, remind me to record with you again, Mike, since you asked the question and answer it, and did a great
You're
job.
Like, why am I even here if I'm just going to answer the questions? All right.
So I do think what you brought up is what, differentiates. It is, you're talking hundreds versus thousands. You're talking tables. You're talking networking beforehand at lunch. You're talking networking breaks in between, as well as, a networking reception at the end. It is local for most of the folks that work at the department and the Hill. So that, as you mentioned, folks are able to stay. We do see a good number of, government folks participating in addition to, our member companies and non-member companies that come. And again, we just try to tee up those opportunities to have those conversations. And quite frankly, we're able to actually ask, our speakers questions. So we do preserve time, in each of our sessions, for lack of a better term, to allow for questions to be asked.
One thing I also look at for conferences is who are the sponsors, who's attending. I think that could give me a good indication of what are the topics, who's going to be in the room, all that. Steve, could you talk? Obviously, it's a nice shout out to the sponsors, but I think it's really useful to assessing. Is this worth my time to show up at Weston in Arlington next Thursday? Who are the sponsors for this?
So our title sponsor is the Golden Key Group, and then our premier sponsors are Amentum, CACI, DLH, HII, and Leidos. And then we have several other sponsors, and I'll make sure we put the link into the podcast as well, where you can see all of the sponsors. But we are very blessed by all the sponsors that we have in terms of, whether it's, a lot of them are participating in the planning committee or just, again, making sure that we can host this event and set it up in a way that, to the previous question, make it so that it is very much worth members and non-members, private sector companies' time to be able to come, have that interaction. And we hear the same feedback from the government reps as well in terms of being able to, hear things, smaller group, having those interactions. So my thanks again to all the sponsors.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And that I'd say that to the small businesses out there, the partners, the ones outside of DC, that can be a great value we see from our clients is attending these events to sure hear from the government and connect with them, but maybe you're a subcontractor and you're really looking to connect with the big contractors, the primes. This can be, and a generic LinkedIn emails or message isn't getting you the response you want. I find that in person can be a really good time to make that connection. And build that relationship with those primes. Again, especially for those groups that are small businesses or maybe doing more subbing in the market.
I think, that is one of the things that we hear collectively when we do surveys from our members. What we hear about are partnership opportunities, networking opportunities, sharing lessons learned, and then even mentoring opportunities as well. So again, that is, I think, one of the prime features of PSC conferences, including the Defense Conference.
Well, let's talk. I touched on this a little bit, how we're involved, but Steve, so obviously you don't have to be a member to attend. You can just sign up to get to know PSC, show up next Thursday, but talk about some of the other ways that new organizations, not members, could attend and really the value. We're thinking ROI. It's an investment of resources, and time. So what are the different ways to get engaged, and what are the things that the members could get out of that?
Absolutely. Well, we'll start with the basics. You can go to defense.psccouncil.org to go up and register. And like Mike said, whether you're a member or non-member, you can attend. And you can attend both in person or virtual. So both options are available there. So again, opportunities for folks to be able to participate. And again, if you're a PSC member, you're a little more aware of the services and, again, sort of the conferences and the opportunities that are out there. I do think it is an opportunity for you to learn more about, obviously, the PSC and what all we have to offer in terms of what we can do for members in terms of advocacy. But I also do think, again, that opportunity to hear the latest and greatest from the policymakers that are in fact shaping the policy that is going to impact all of us inside of this industrial base.
What's your advice for those attending, especially given your, we won't say how your government experience, Steve. I know it's out already, but maybe someone joined halfway through. What are the effects? We always want to share with clients, how is government thinking? How can you most effectively obviously they want to partner with you, but they can't respond to 1,000 emails coming in every day about meet with me about this or this or this. At a conference, you have that unique opportunity to talk face to face. I don't know if you have a story from your time in government, but could you share some insight on what's an efficient way, an effective way for industry to engage with government at an event?
Honestly, I think it's the same advice whether you're industry or government. I do think, it is important to think ahead of time. If you only have 30 seconds, what is it that you want to say? So, is it a question? In my case, I'm a little more altruistic. I'm going to ask a question that's going to be a little bit more beneficial to all if it's in, one of our, conference sessions. But if it's in a, more intimate engagement during the networking sessions, what is it that short and concise? What is the ask? How do you want it to be remembered? Again, just what's going to make you sort of stand out, at least from a government perspective, in terms of someone saying, oh yeah, I remember Mike said that idea. He did give me his information. Let me circle back. I do think, knowing what you hope to get out of that engagement, thinking about that in advance. Again, even whether it's the government engaging private sector, because everybody's just as busy, or vice versa. I do think having taken the time ahead of it, the engagement, and actually thinking about what is it that you want to, leave? What is that message that you want to resonate?
I'd add this too, get interested in your thoughts too. Say you're a sub looking to connect with one of these primes, having a sense of like what, not just, hey, big prime, we want to work together. Can we have coffee after this? What are the opportunities? Do you know what contracts they have coming up for rebid? Do you see pre-solicitations or early demand signals in the pipeline? So having some specific opportunity to connect with. The other one is with some of the very high level speakers, which PSC does get a lot of high level people, say a member of Congress, probably going up to them and expecting them to reply to your email and meeting with you next week might not be the most realistic one. What I like to do is when I see the high level person, connect with them, say hello, introduce yourself, and then figure out who's the best person on their team to follow up with. Making sure you get that contact, if it's the comms person or the LA or LC for whatever the specific topic is that you're interested in.
Absolutely. And again, being able to have that exchange, and then quite frankly, being able to leverage someone like a trade association like PSC to help you with that follow-up as well.
Great. Well, we'll all be there on next Thursday. Hope to see everyone
Next
there.
Thursday.
Steve, any parting thoughts or that you wanna leave us with?
Mike, again, thank you so much for hosting me. I just think it's a wonderful opportunity next Thursday with the Defense Conference. If you've been to previous ones, I'm sure you can attest to the value that comes out of it. If you haven't had that opportunity, hopefully we've given you some insight on why you should attend, either in person or virtually. I think there's a lot to be taken away from that. And if you have additional questions about PSC, lots of information available on our website, or feel free to reach out to me.
And you can connect with Steve Harris at LinkedIn. Connect with me, Mike Shanley at LinkedIn. With that, Steve, thank you to you, to Mika, Andrea, Jim, the whole team at PSC. The important work that you guys do, especially during at this time, during the shutdown. So thank you for that. And looking forward to a strong event next Thursday.
Thank you again, Mike.
Thank you for tuning in to the GovDiscovery AI podcast with Mike Shanley. GovDiscovery AI leverages our team's decade of experience winning federal funding to deliver federal growth intel to sales, proposal, and capture teams working in defense and civilian markets. Each market intel report is delivered by federal growth experts leveraging our proprietary deep data discovery process. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and connect with GovDiscovery AI and Mike Shanley on LinkedIn, or learn more at govdiscoveryai.com.